Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Hansen, Carl Hansen. Today's video short, hopefully video short, is going to be about alcohol. That is the alcohol we consume in beverages. Now, alcohol is produced by yeast, and yeast converts sugar into alcohol. And they do that in the absence of oxygen in the fermentation process. I think it's important to know that alcohol is a toxin. First off, if you frame alcohol as something as a beverage or some entertainment value, I think you should probably rechange the framing. And instead of putting it next to beverages, put it in the category of more like Roundup or something like that. When we consume alcohol, our liver works overtime converting alcohol into acetaldehyde. When that converts it into acetaldehyde, acetaldehyde itself is very much a toxin and is very irritating and damaging to a number of other cells in the body. An enzyme called acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH, what that does is that converts acetaldehyde, the really toxic stuff, to something called acetate, which can then later be used in other chemical processes. But anyway, that's a limiting enzyme, meaning that we don't convert as much as we think. In other words, we don't really adequately, rapidly detoxify alcohol and excrete it in a benign form. Our liver has to work overtime doing so. These conversions that the liver is doing to convert alcohol to one product and then that particular toxin to another product creates a lot of what's called oxidative stress, which is injurious to the liver, causes a lot of liver inflammation. So that's a prominent issue, the oxidative stress caused by the sheer amount of effort needed to make these conversions to detoxify alcohol. And even at that, the body has limited capacity at detoxifying. Alcohol destroys, among other things, brain cells. There's plenty of bits of evidence that a person's brain shrinks by the amount of alcohol they drink, the total amount consumed. The cortex does, where the nerve cell bodies are, and some of the wires connecting to some of these nerves. So alcohol causes cerebral atrophy in proportion to the amount of alcohol that's consumed. As you might expect, since alcohol can easily enter the brain and essentially every tissue in the body, it has some effects on some of the brain circuits, specifically a lot of the mood circuits, how it changes the proportion and balance of the serotonin and particular dopamine products and neurotransmitters, how it disrupts the baseline and creates peaks and troughs of these compounds, which are not typical for the human neuron. Now, if somebody abstains from alcohol for about a month, it looks like these systems sort of come back into balance again. I would like to say, though, if you do consume alcohol, large amounts of alcohol, you do not want to stop it quickly or abruptly, because it is fatal that if a person consumes a large amount of alcohol, that they stop it, because that can then cause various seizures, withdrawal issues, and stuff like that. If you are concerned, even by after talking about this much, then don't abruptly discontinue. Try to taper that down. Specifically in the brain, some of the mood changes it makes are because alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. The front of our brain, the frontal cortex, is involved with kind of telling us whether something we're doing is wise, or if it's appropriate, or if there's a track record of it being adverse or bad behavior. Our prefrontal cortex inhibits a lot of behavior. It prevents us from doing a lot of untoward things. Alcohol interferes with that top-down inhibition. So the ability to look at an event and make a prefrontal cortex decision that I shouldn't do that, if you will, that inhibition from the top of the cortex is broken down by alcohol, which is why people who drink alcohol often do very stupid and silly things, and actually even things that are very deleterious to themselves. Alcohol actually increases the number of synapses that control habitual behavior. It actually creates a scenario where it reinforces habitual behavior. and it decreases the number of synapses. Again, this is nerve connections in the brain. Decreases the number of synapses that are involved in inhibition of certain behavior. So not only does it affect mood and well-being, but it also affects inhibition of adverse behavior. And that's an important part in how we control ourselves as human versus just reacting spontaneously and organically. I see a lot of people in my office with sleep disturbance, and a large number of those people do consume alcohol. Alcohol in excessive quantities often makes people want to sleep, but the sleep quality is very poor. It is not the typical re-energizing process of slow wave sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, etc. Alcohol disrupts that whole cycle. And alcohol actually makes sleeping worse and causes early morning awakening, possibly by the effects of alcohol level dropping. There may be some release of some of these inhibitory circuits and almost a stimulating effect. Ethanol also affects the parts of the brain where the part of the brain communicates with one of the glands below the brain, the pituitary gland, which then communicates with the adrenal gland, little glands above your kidneys. And that communication under the influence of alcohol causes the brain, technically hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, to prolong the amount of time that cortisol is present in our system. Cortisol is often present early on as we awaken, but then as we get up and catch sunlight and stuff like that, cortisol levels will drop, dopamine levels will go up, but cortisol levels stay elevated with the use of alcohol. Cortisol is an important hormone, important chemical, but is a stress hormone. Prolonged and elevated levels of cortisol are not good. There are very few things that you could say good about prolonged and elevated levels of cortisol. So if your cortisol level is kind of a certain level in the morning, but then it rapidly tapers away, that's one thing. Alcohol is making these cortisol levels stay up longer. From the sexual side effects, in all males and females, we all have testosterone and estradiol, estrogen in us. Females typically have more testosterone than they have estradiol. However, the proportions are that females' amount of estradiol is higher, significantly in proportion to males, as far as the amount of estradiol the males have. Testosterone gets converted by an enzyme into a more active form of testosterone, but some testosterone gets converted by an enzyme called aromatase, and testosterone actually gets converted into estradiol. So yes, the male hormone gets converted into a female hormone. The activity of that conversion from the testosterone to the estradiol is enhanced in the presence of alcohol. That causes stimulation of that aromatase enzyme, converting testosterone to estradiol. So males will have elevations of their estradiol, their estrogen levels. All males have some estrogen in them, and that's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I would say males having estradiol is a necessary thing for good health. But the proportion starts to flip where estradiol's level go up more so than testosterone would. They don't invert. Estradiol level doesn't become higher than testosterone level. But from a male standpoint, that proportion is adverse. Females too. This may be hypothetical, but another effect of alcohol seems like there's a very strong association, again, mostly in ladies that we can detect, that the amount of alcohol consumed in females does increase the chance of breast cancer, and that's measurable. It may be because of this effect of working on that aromatase enzyme. So ladies have a certain amount of testosterone, and maybe the aromatase now is enhanced. So what testosterone ladies have, that even further gets converted into estradiol. And maybe estradiol elevation may enhance some of the breast cancer. The exact answer to that's not completely known, but the association between alcohol quantity and breast cancer is real. In the intestines, our intestines are inhabited by plethora of bacteria. And you've heard of probiotics and prebiotics, and maybe you've heard of the biome that exists in our intestines. And the bacteria that are present in our whole GI tract, not just our intestines, play an important role in keeping us healthy. A healthy intestinal, primarily biome, that is the amount of certain types of bacteria, is vital to health and function. It's a symbiotic relationship. We could, if you waved a magic wand and got rid of all the bacteria from inside our digestive tract, we would not be healthy. Alcohol is a toxin. Remember, if you cut or scrape yourself, you often wipe down a wound with alcohol. Before we inject somebody's knee, we scrub the area with alcohol to kill any bacteria in the region. So if you drink alcohol, that alcohol is going into your GI tract and killing off a fair proportion of bacteria, many of which could be good. So at least you're throwing off that balance, that biome. Alcohol is a toxin to humans directly, but it's also a toxin to the good bacteria that reside in us. Another important factor about alcohol. So how much alcohol is too much? Ideally, alcohol, I would prefer for my patient's health, alcohol be at 0, but I know it can't be. If you drink one drink and you do that maybe twice a week, you're good. To drink, if you're drinking daily, or let's say you drink just a few days a week, but you increase your intake during weekends, that falls under the definition of chronic drinker. I wouldn't say alcoholic, but you're beyond at that point your metabolic capacity to handle the alcohol from an internal damage standpoint. I don't mean you can't drink without getting drunk, but you can still be doing damage to your body even if you're not getting intoxicated. That's an important thing to remember. Obviously, intoxication is also bad, and that implicates extreme levels of alcohol. But and some people's enzyme systems can detoxify. Ladies can't detoxify as much alcohol as guys can. But I would still not say that drinking on a daily basis is at all a good idea. Would not advocate for that. There's some discussion in the past that red wine is good for. Be aware that there's a lot of that comes from the alcohol industry. There actually is no evidence that red wine or alcohol intake improves longevity or how well you feel. There is a chemical, resveratrol, that's found in certain wines, which may have some benefit, but it's in such minuscule amounts that you'd have to drink so much wine to make any difference. But anyway, there's no evidence that drinking alcohol does any good. I realize people in the Mediterranean who drink wine on a regular basis, apparently, that they do better, but a lot of times their dietary habits are also different, not just that they consume a glass of red wine every day. I would say their dietary habits are significantly different than. So in summary, if you do drink, make sure you cut down your drinking, maybe to twice a week. At no time, try not to exceed the equivalent of 2 drinks per day. We usually look at that in grams. If you're getting 20 grams of alcohol in a day, that's way past your body's ability to detoxify. And your liver is just going to be working overtime, saying, what the hell are you doing to me? Your brain neurons will start checking out. So I don't need this. So if you can aim to not drink alcohol whatsoever, that would be the better thing to do if you can. If you do have an alcohol disorder, please tell your physician. And I try to tell patients that, just tell me what your alcohol intake is. Don't try to deny or hide anything. I can't help anything if somebody who drinks 3 drinks a day tells me they only drink, 1 drink about once a week. But it's an important thing to know a person's alcohol intake. And alcohol serves no nutritional or beneficial purpose for us, but in fact is a toxin. You don't necessarily have to run away from it completely, but keep in mind that, give your body a break. Don't keep pumping a toxin. I hope you got a little bit of insight there about alcohol, and thank you again for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye.